Welcome to the pre-application information session for the fiscal year 2021 Grants to Engage Men and Boys as Allies in the Prevention of Violence Against Women and Girls program, also referred to as the EM program. The Office on Violence Against Women, also referred to as OVW, is hosting this webinar to go over the FY21 solicitation and the EM program. My name is Kelly Green, and I am the program specialist assigned to the EM program. The purpose of the pre-application information session is to highlight a few key points in the solicitation. However, it is not the intent, nor is there sufficient time to go over every aspect of the solicitation. All applicants are responsible for reading the FY21 EM solicitation and the OVW solicitation companion guide to ensure a complete application is submitted. Before we get started, you may find it helpful to have the EM solicitation in front of you for a point of reference during this information session. Please note that the EM solicitation is one of two solicitations issued under the Consolidated Youth and Engaging Men Grant Program. The other solicitation is focused on serving children and youth impacted by domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. This information session focuses solely on the Engaging Men solicitation. If you're interested in submitting an application for children and youth, please view the information session specifically for that solicitation. Next, we're going to talk about the registration and submission information. Applications are due by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday, March 23rd, 2021. OVW will not accept late submissions except under limited circumstances as described on pages 30 through 32 of the solicitation. In addition to the application due date, there are other important steps and deadlines that affect your ability to submit an application. First, every applicant must obtain a Data Universal Number System, also known as DUNS, and register online with the System for Award Management, also known as SAM, and with grants.gov. Obtaining a DUNS number and the registration process can take several days and must be completed before applicants are eligible to submit an application. For that reason, OVW strongly encourages applicants to start this process as early as possible. We have provided some dates to assist you with the planning. You should apply for a DUNS number by March 1st of 2021, also register with SAM by March 1st of 2021, and then also register with grants.gov by March 9th of 2021. Every year, applications are rejected during the submission process because the applicant's DUNS number and/or registration with SAM have expired, or the applicant did not begin the registration process early enough. At the conclusion of this webinar, it's recommended that you start this process if you have not already done so. Applicants that currently have a DUNS number and are registered with SAM and grants.gov should check their status within those systems to ensure they are current and have not expired. Next, we're going to talk about a new submission process for fiscal year 2021. This year, there is a new process for submitting applications. It is highly recommended that you read over the submission process beginning on page 2 of the solicitation. When ready to apply, applicants may find this funding opportunity on grants.gov using the CFDA number 16.888, the grants.gov opportunity number O-OVW-2021-48004, or the title of the solicitation, all of which can be found on the cover page of the solicitation. The FY 2021 application submission process is a new two-step process this year with significant differences from the application process in previous years. Application materials will be submitted in grants.gov and JustGrants. We strongly encourage starting the application process as early as possible to allow time to learn the new system and process. To begin the submission process, applicants will first submit the application for Federal Assistance Form SF424 and the Disclosure of Lobbying Activities Form SFLLL in grants.gov. After submitting these forms in grants.gov, the applicant will receive an email notification from the Justice Grant System, also known as JustGrants, which is our new grant management system, to complete the remainder of the application in JustGrants. If the applicant is a new user in JustGrants, the email will include instructions on registering with JustGrants. Remember, you will not be able to submit an application until you have obtained a DUNS number, have registered with SAM and grants.gov, and have submitted the SF424 and SFLLL in grants.gov. All of these steps must be done before the new system, JustGrants, will generate an email for you to complete and submit your EM application in JustGrants. Next, we will talk about the JustGrants submission process. If you have applied for OVW funding in prior years, you will notice significant changes in the application process. In the new JustGrants system, applicants will directly enter some portions of the application in text boxes, fill out web-based forms for other portions of the application, and upload documents as attachments, all in JustGrants. The following major elements of the application are examples of how applicants will submit information in JustGrants. The proposal abstract will be entered in a text box. The data requested with application, formerly known as the summary data sheet, will be uploaded as an attachment. The proposal narrative will be uploaded as an attachment. The budget worksheet and budget narrative will be entered into a web-based form and uploaded as an attachment. And the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding, will be uploaded as an attachment. In addition to these major elements, other documentation will be required for all applications or when applicable. Read the EM solicitation carefully for a full description of all required items for the EM program. Additional information related to the submission process can be found on pages 28 through 37 of the solicitation. Next, we're going to talk about some webinars that JustGrants will be hosting to assist applicants. JustGrants will be hosting a webinar to provide applicants with information on how to submit an application. They anticipate scheduling about 9 sessions to ensure everyone has the opportunity to participate. The webinar will be approximately 1.5 hours with 30 to 40 minutes focusing on application submission and mechanics content, and the remainder for questions and answers. Sessions will be limited to 350 participants so that the JustGrants team can respond to the questions about application submission. The webinar will cover the process of how to submit an application in grants.gov through submitting an application package in JustGrants. The sessions will ensure that applicants know how to navigate and use JustGrants, including how to access and utilize DOJ's new grants management system to apply for funding, how to search for and find open DOJ funding opportunities in grants.gov, the steps and actions that applicants need to take prior to applying for funding, such as registering with sam.gov, the JustGrants roles needed to ensure users are prepared to take the necessary actions to submit an application, such as the entity administrator and the application submitter, and how to navigate and use the system, such as how to save your work and find resources, including training materials and job aids to help troubleshoot technical issues. Each of the sessions will include live captioning and will be recorded. At least one session will be posted with a transcript and captioning on the JustGrants website. On the next slide, we're going to talk about award period, amount, and award notification. The grant award period is for 36 months, tentatively beginning on October 1st, 2021, and ending on September 30th of 2024. Applicants should submit applications with project activities and budgets that reflect this period. Applicants may request up to a total of $350,000 in funding, and OVW anticipates notifying all applicants of funding decisions by October 1st, 2021. See pages 8 and 9 for more information. Next, we're going to talk about the types of applications. Both new and continuation applications are being accepted. New applications are those that have never received funding under the Consolidated Grant Program to address children and youth experiencing domestic and sexual assault and engage men and boys as allies, or whose funding under this program expired more than 12 months ago. Continuation applications are those that have an existing CYEM grant or whose CYEM grant closed within the last 12 months. Applicants may apply to both the EM and CY solicitations. See page 9 for more information. Next, we're going to talk about eligibility. Eligibility is mentioned on the cover of the solicitation as well as on page 11. Eligible applicants are nonprofits, non-governmental entities, tribal organizations, Indian tribal governments, units of local government, and agencies of a unit of local government. Foreign entities and programs are not eligible for funding under the EM program. Applications submitted by ineligible entities or that do not meet the program requirements may not be considered for funding. Grantees that were awarded a CYEM grant in FY2019 or FY2020 are not eligible to apply for funding in FY21, either as the applicant or as a partner or subrecipient. Likewise, an entity that is a partner or subrecipient on an FY2019 or FY2020 CYEM award is not eligible to apply as the lead applicant or serve as a partner or a subrecipient on an FY2021 CY proposal. Now that we have covered the process for submitting an application and reviewed the types of applications that can be submitted and the eligibility requirements, let's jump into developing your proposed project. Next, we're going to discuss the OVW priority areas. Each year, OVW identifies specific topics or issues related to domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking that the office will focus attention. We call these the OVW priority areas. Applicants may choose to incorporate one or more of the priority areas into their proposal. Applicants proposing projects to address a priority area may be given special consideration during the recommendation process. What that means is that OVW has the discretion to recommend a lower scoring application for funding if it meaningfully addresses one or more of the priority areas. Please note, applicants are not required to address a priority area. It is completely optional. A common mistake that we see in applications that claim to address a priority area is that they do not include all of the requirements of the priority area in the proposal narrative, which results in a lower score during peer review. So if you do choose to include the priority area in your proposed project, be certain you have reviewed the requirements and that your proposal narrative and budget include activities and strategies to fully address the priority area. Next, we'll talk about the priority area for this specific solicitation. This year, the OVW priority area for the EM solicitation is to increase efforts to combat stalking. Applicants proposing to address this priority area must propose projects where at least 50% of the activities address stalking and/or cyber stalking, including the intersection of these crimes with dating violence. Next, we're going to talk about the Engaging Men program. The EM program supports projects that create educational programming and community organizing to encourage men and boys to work as allies with women and girls to prevent domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. Within the EM program are 3 purpose areas which applicants must choose one or more to focus their work. The purpose areas for the EM program can be found on page 6 of the solicitation. Applicants may select one or more of the purpose areas to address in their proposed project. The activities described in the proposal narrative and the budget should be reflective of the selected purpose area. In the next slide, we're going to take a deeper dive into each of the purpose areas. Funds under this program may be used to address one or more of the purpose areas, which are Purpose Area 1, develop and/or implement programming to recruit and train men and boys to serve as role models, positive influencers, change agents, and/or mentors to address and prevent domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and/or stalking. Purpose Area 2, integrate education on domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and/or stalking, also known as the 4 VAWA crimes, into established support and/or enrichment programs to assist men and/or boys in developing healthy relationships, challenging social norms that support violence against women and girls, becoming active bystanders, and understanding the intersection of the 4 VAWA crimes and other types of violence. Purpose Area 3, develop and implement a Train the Trainer program for community organizations or programs and/or governmental agencies or programs to incorporate education and/or training into their existing work with male clients to prevent violence against women and girls. On the next slide, I want to provide you with a few helpful hints to assist you in submitting a strong application. First, applicants must choose at least one purpose area to address in their project. Applicants choosing more than one should ensure their proposed project fully addresses the requirements for each purpose area chosen. A common mistake I see with applications for the EM program are projects that are focused on primary prevention education. While this is important work, the focus of the EM program is to actively bring men and boys into the prevention work. Strong proposals will include a clear call to action as to how men and boys can become allies in the prevention of violence against women and girls. On the next slide, we're going to talk about the required partnerships. All applicants must establish multidisciplinary partnerships through a coordinated community response, also known as a CCR, documented in the Memorandum of Understanding, also known as the MOU, to ensure the proposed project has the necessary expertise, experience, and capacity to engage men and boys as allies. Applicants and partners are limited to meeting or fulfilling only one partnership category or role. This is a very important requirement of the solicitation, so I'm going to repeat that. Applicants and partners are limited to serving as the agency or organization to meet a specific partnership requirement in only one category or role. This means that every applicant must have at least one partner as outlined in the solicitation. Applications that fail to include the required partnerships will be removed from the review process. The required partners for the Engaging Men program and for all 3 purpose areas are a victim service provider, if not the applicant, and an organization or program with demonstrated experience providing support, enrichment, and/or leadership development programming for men or boys, if not the applicant. 2 examples of what the required partnerships may look like in an application are: first, a victim service provider is submitting an application to develop a program for men in the community to become leaders in their neighborhoods by teaching young boys bystander intervention skills. Their required partners for the project will be a community-based organization that provides support, enrichment, or leadership development programming for men or boys. The community-based organization is not a victim service provider, but they possess the expertise and access necessary for the victim service provider to engage with the men and boys that will be participating in the project. The second example is a community-based organization that provides a fatherhood program for men in the community. The proposed project will integrate training and education on domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking into the existing program to empower men to be allies in preventing violence against women. Because the community-based organization does not have the same expertise that a victim service provider would have related to the VAWA crimes, they must partner with a victim service provider. So next, let's talk about the definition of a victim service provider. Refer to page 12 for the full definition of a victim service provider. But to qualify as a victim service provider, the victim service provider must provide direct victim services to victims of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and/or stalking. These services must be one of the primary purposes for which the organization exists. Examples of direct victim services include victim advocacy, medical and court accompaniment, short and/or long-term counseling specifically focused on the aforementioned crimes, or maintaining a hotline for one of the previously listed crimes. Examples of victim service providers are domestic violence shelters, rape crisis centers, and child advocacy centers. On the next slide, we're going to talk about additional partnerships. Before moving on to the next sections, I want to discuss the importance of partnerships. First, one of the requirements of the Engagement Program is the development of a coordinated community response team. Because of this, applicants are encouraged to have more than the required partnerships. Second, other than the victim service provider, it is not a requirement of this program that the applicant or the partners have experience or expertise addressing domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking. This is why a victim service provider is a required partner if they are not the applicant. Each of the partners should bring the specific skills and knowledge necessary to support the overall successful development and implementation of the proposed project. When determining who to partner with, you should take into consideration any specific populations you will be working with, gaining access to men and boys, establishing credible messengers for the programming, and any other specific skills or resources that may be required. You want to establish a strong multidisciplinary team to successfully implement and support the overall success of the proposed project. Next, I'm going to review some of the mandatory program requirements for all applications. Applicants that receive funding under the Engagement Program are required to engage in and provide certain activities throughout the award period. I'm going to highlight just a few. The full list of mandatory requirements is on page 10 of the solicitation. Please read these carefully and make sure your proposed project includes each of the mandatory requirements. Failure to address each of the mandatory requirements in the project narrative may result in the deduction of points during the peer review and/or programmatic review process. Grantees are required to participate in OVW-sponsored training and technical assistance, including a new grantee orientation. All grantees must participate in the technical assistance events and activities organized and supported by the Engagement Program designated technical assistance providers. This includes, but is not limited to, monthly and/or quarterly conference and telephone calls, site visits, in-person training institutes, peer-to-peer learning opportunities, and web-based trainings. Applicants are required to set aside $30,000 to $35,000 of their total budgets for this requirement. I will go over this in more detail in the budget section. Another requirement is that engagement applicants must create or expand a coordinated community response team to develop and guide the proposed project. The CCR must meet regularly and be representative of the community to be served through the project. All projects must provide crisis intervention for participants at all educational, outreach, and training events. The person that provides the crisis intervention must not be the facilitator. This person must be available by participants if they are triggered or wish to speak with someone during the event, not just after the event. The person providing the service must be trained in crisis intervention per the organization or state licensing or training requirements. All projects must cross-train project staff, project partners, and CCR team members. This means that victim service providers will be providing training and education on the VAWA crimes and the impact on survivors to other members of the project and vice versa. Community organizations and/or other programs will be providing training and education to the victim service providers on working and engaging with men and boys. All funded projects have an initial planning phase prior to implementing the full scope of the proposed project. The planning phase is approximately 6 months for new grantees and 3 months for continuation grantees. During the planning phase, grantees will be conducting a community needs and strengths assessment specific to the proposed project and design a strategic plan for implementation of the project. Before moving to the next section, it's important to note that all of the activities listed on page 10 are required. However, applicants may and are encouraged to add additional activities beyond what is required, so long as they are within the scope of the program and are an allowable activity. Next, we're going to talk about application information. Please refer to the solicitation beginning on page 13 for specific information related to the content and form of application submission. All applications must include the following 4 components: a proposal narrative, a budget detail worksheet and narrative, the data requested with application, formerly known as the data summary sheet, and a memorandum of understanding. Applications that do not include these 4 components will be considered substantially incomplete and will not be considered for funding. Each of these components is scored during peer review. In addition, new this year, the proposal abstract is also going to be scored by peer reviewers. As I just mentioned, new this year, the proposal abstract will be scored by the peer reviewers. The proposal abstract is worth 5 points. The proposal abstract should provide a short summary of the proposed project. This specific document will be used by OVW when creating our recommendation memos. In fact, with the new grant management system, JustGrants, the recommendation memos will be automatically generated for us by the system. Because of this, we have provided you with a template to follow on page 15 of the solicitation. It is recommended that you follow this template by creating a Word document, then cut and paste the proposal abstract into the text box in JustGrants. When using the template from the solicitation, there are prompts within brackets for you to fill in information. Next, we're going to talk about the data requested with application. Every application must include a response to the data requested on pages 24 and 25. This document, which is worth 5 points, is scored during the review process and should be no more than 4 pages. The best way to avoid having points deducted is to answer each of the 13 questions in the order they are listed in the solicitation. Some applicants find it helpful to cut and paste the questions into a new document and provide a response below each question. This also makes it easy for the reviewers to see if all of the information requested in this section has been provided. Question number 6 is specifically asking if the applicant has a current grant under this program, or if they are a project partner on a current grant or a pending application for this program. Question 7 is specifically asking if any of the proposed project partners are a current grantee under this program or a project partner for a current grant or pending application for this program. And question number 13 is asking you to identify the percentage of activities that will focus on the specific crimes listed. Applicants do not receive special consideration or extra points for addressing every crime listed, so applicants should not feel obligated to address each one. Applicants should mark only those crimes that the project will address. Remember, the proposal narrative must clearly demonstrate that you are addressing the crimes that you have identified in the data requested with application section. This is an area where I see applicants lose points during peer review. The most common scenario is applicants will mark that they will address each crime even as little as 1%. When peer reviewers are scoring an application, they are looking to ensure that the proposed project has activities to address these crimes noted by the applicant. A strong application will include activities for each of the crimes marked, even if it is just 1%. In addition, before moving on, I want to talk just a bit about sex trafficking. Engaging men funds may be used to address sex trafficking, but only in the context of sexual assault. On the next slide, we're going to talk about the proposal narrative. The proposal narrative consists of 3 sections: purpose of proposal, what will be done, and who will implement. All combined, the proposal narrative is worth a total of 55 points and is the bulk of the application. This is where applicants provide detailed information related to the proposed project. Before I get into each section of the proposal narrative, it is important to discuss the page limit. It is imperative that you are mindful of the formatting and the number of allowable pages. Please see pages 13 and 14 for specifics. Peer reviewers are instructed to stop reading and scoring the section at the page number cutoff. You do not want to lose valuable points due to going over the page limit or not following the formatting requirements. Each year, I have seen excellent applications fall below the funding cutoff score for not adhering to the format requirements. With that said, the project narrative should be no more than 15 pages, double-spaced. The type should be no smaller than 12 point, and you should use Times New Roman or Arial font and include page numbers. On the next slide, we're going to discuss the 3 parts of the proposal narrative. First is the purpose of the proposal, which is worth 10 points. This section describes the need for the project and helps reviewers understand your specific community needs. Common mistakes include providing too much information, information that is not relevant to the proposed project, or not enough information to be responsive to what is being asked. Follow the guidance on page 16 of the solicitation to ensure you are providing the required information. Also keep in mind that this section counts towards the page limit. You want to be sure that you are being responsive to the questions in this section, while at the same time ensuring you have enough pages remaining to provide detailed information on the proposed project. I have seen applications where the applicant used more pages to describe the need for the project than the number of pages to describe the project activities to address the problem. Strong applications strike a balance between justifying the need and providing detailed information on how the need will be addressed. The second section is what will be done, and this is worth 30 points. This is the section where you will describe what you are going to do with the grant funds. You should provide detailed information that clearly describes the activities and strategies to support your proposed project. The goals and objectives should be clear and detailed so reviewers understand how the proposed activities meet the needs identified and the program requirements. For example, there is a difference between stating we will train men as opposed to saying we will train 15 men to serve as trainers in bystander intervention for the boys at the local community youth center. In addition to the 13 items that must be addressed in this section, each purpose area also has specific criteria that also needs to be addressed. Be certain to include the information requested for the specific purpose area or areas that you stated on the data requested with application sheet that your application will be addressing in the proposed project. Some common mistakes to avoid in this section are not providing a description of products to be developed or purchased with grant funds. If products such as brochures, videos, billboards, or curriculums are mentioned in this section, there should be a line item for them included in the budget and vice versa. Not describing how products and/or services will be tailored to meet the needs of a specific population to be served, such as age groups, different types of audiences for the training and education. Not including activities and strategies that will be developed and implemented to meet the OVW priority area that the applicant has identified on the data requested with application sheet. Remember, the priority area is optional and no points are deducted for not addressing a priority area. However, points are deducted if a priority area is identified and there is no supporting activities provided in the what will be done section. For continuation applications, not providing details on how the newly proposed project expands or enhances the current or last project. The last part of the proposal narrative is the who will implement, which is worth 5 points. In this section, the applicant should identify whom the key individuals and organizations will be that are involved in the proposed project. This section must demonstrate that the individuals and organizations identified have the capacity to address the stated need and can successfully implement the proposed project activities. As a friendly reminder, this section is also part of the page limit. You'll want to keep this section focused on who is involved in the major project activities and who is most responsible for ensuring the goals and objectives of the proposed project are met. Please refer to pages 15 through 18 to ensure you include all of the required information for this section. Next, we're going to talk about the budget detail worksheet and narrative. The budget detail worksheet and narrative is worth 15 points. During the peer review process, the peer reviewers will be reviewing and scoring the budgets to ensure they meet the program requirements, and do not include any unallowable activities and/or expenses. It is the applicant's responsibility to read this section thoroughly in order to submit a proper budget. Pages 18 through 24 provide detailed information on how to develop and submit your budget for your proposed project. Please note, there is a new process for submitting your budget this year. Applicants will complete a web-based form in JustGrants for the budget worksheet and budget narrative, and applicants are required to upload the applicable associated documentation that is described on pages 18 through 24 of the solicitation. I'm going to go over some of the budget requirements specific for the Engaging Men program. All applicants must include funds specifically for OVW mandated technical assistance and travel costs. The Engaging Men program has a dedicated team of technical assistance providers specifically for providing comprehensive technical assistance programming to Engaging Men grantees. All Engaging Men grantees are required to attend and participate in the technical assistance events. Projects located in the contiguous U.S. must allocate $30,000, and projects located in the U.S. territories or in the state of Hawaii or Alaska must allocate $35,000. Applicants should plan to send at least 4 individuals involved in their project to 3 OVW mandated technical assistance training events each year of the award for a total of 9 training events. In addition to the training events, grantees are required to send a minimum of 3 individuals to the new grantee orientation. This funding may not be used for any other travel and/or training, and any remaining funds in this section will be returned to OVW at the end of the award period. If applicants are interested in attending conferences or other trainings to increase their team's skills and knowledge, additional funding outside of the $30,000 to $35,000 should be set aside for that specific purpose. The budget should also include funds to ensure project activities and materials are accessible to individuals with disabilities. For example, videos can be closed captioned and translated into other languages. Written materials can be translated into different languages. Interpreters can be made available at events for those who are deaf, hard of hearing, or speak a language other than English. The budget should also include funds to compensate all project partners for their contribution to the project, including attendance at the Engaging Men technical assistance events. The exception to this is if a project partner is a state, local, tribal, or territorial agency, and the activities they would be responsible for in the project are within their regular scope of work. An example of this would be a program manager at the Department of Parks and Recreation who runs an after-school program for youth. Because this is within the normal scope of work for the project manager and the Department of Parks and Recreation, this grant could not compensate them for that activity. However, you could designate grant funds to compensate them for mileage to and from the CCR team meetings, travel costs associated with attending the OVW mandated technical assistance trainings, and participating in after-hour events. I also want to highlight spending limits on media buys. No more than 10% of the total funding may be used for media buys such as billboards, radio, TV, public service announcements, and bus and subway advertisements. In some circumstances, the budget is reviewed independently of the full application. Therefore, it is important that the budget narrative be as comprehensive as possible and describe in detail each line item in the budget. A strong budget and budget narrative should provide enough information to understand the proposed project without having to refer back to the project narrative. Last for this section is some helpful advice that our peer reviewers will appreciate that you heed. Please do not use anything less than 12-point type when developing your budget. Reviewers are looking over numerous budgets. It is very hard and frustrating to read a budget that is 10-point font or smaller. There is no page limit for the budget section. Your budget can be 30 pages, so there's no need to try to squeeze it all onto 1 or 2 or 3 pages. In addition, the budget should be one document that is inclusive of all 3 years. Please do not submit 3 one-year budgets. It is best to follow the format of the sample budget that is provided in the Solicitation Companion Guide that is provided for applicants on the OVW website at justice.gov/OVW/resources-applicants. Next, we're going to talk about the Memorandum of Understanding, also known as the MOU. The Memorandum of Understanding, also known as the MOU, is worth 20 points. Pages 25 to 26 provide detailed information on what is required to be included in the MOU. I encourage you to review this carefully when creating your MOU to ensure you are meeting all of the requirements. In the past, I've seen applications miss the cutoff score by a point because information was missing from the MOU. I'm not going to go over everything that must be included in the MOU. Instead, I'm going to provide you with some examples of common mistakes and some helpful hints. Common mistakes that result in point deductions are submitting multiple MOUs. The MOU for this program must be one document. You can have multiple signature pages so long as all of the names and titles of everyone signing the MOU are included on each signature page. Not addressing each of the requirements in the MOU is also a common mistake. There is no page limit for the MOU, so there's no excuse for not providing all of the information requested, even if it seems repetitive. Like the budget, the MOU may be reviewed separately from the full application, so it's important to include all of the requested information, even if you have addressed it elsewhere in the application. Like the budget, there's no page limit, so your MOU could be 30 pages, so don't try to squeeze it all into 1 or 2, or feel like you've already provided information in the proposal narrative. It's not necessary in the MOU. It's necessary in the MOU if it's being requested in that section. Missing signatures, especially the signatures of the required partners, is also a common mistake. Every person and/or organization listed in the MOU must sign the MOU. And finally, another common mistake is submitting an outdated or irrelevant MOU. The MOU must be current, it must be responsive to the solicitation requirements, and include only those activities that are listed in the proposal narrative. For this program, the MOU will be a new document drafted specifically for the proposed project by the applicant in coordination with the proposed project partners. Next, we're going to talk about activities that compromise victim safety and recovery. OVW does not fund activities that jeopardize victim safety, deter or prevent physical or emotional healing for victims, or allow offenders to escape responsibility for their actions. The Solicitation Companion Guide contains a list of these activities. You can find the Solicitation Companion Guide on the OVW website under Resources for Applicants. I'm not going to review the list verbatim. Instead, to assist you with submitting a strong application, I'm going to go over some of the ones that have caused past applicants to receive point deductions during peer review. Project designs and budgets that fail to account for the access needs of individuals with disabilities, with limited English proficiency, or who are deaf or hard of hearing. Peer reviewers usually deduct points off the budget and budget narrative for applications that do not designate funding for how applicants will meet and make their services and/or products accessible to individuals with disabilities. Please give this serious consideration when completing your application. If you will not need to allocate funds to address this requirement because there is another organization or program in your community that will provide this service, it is important for you to state that in the project narrative as well as in the budget and budget narrative. Another is failing to mention that you already have or will be developing policies regarding confidentiality, parental involvement or consent, mandatory reporting, information sharing, and background checks. This is another one that peer reviewers routinely deduct points for during the peer review process. Having these policies in place not only protects the safety of the victim, but also enhances the working relationship between service providers. Do not assume peer reviewers will know these policies exist because you are a victim service provider. They are looking for proof that they do exist or will be developed, and the only way for them to know this is if they read it in your project narrative. And last is failing to provide information about crisis intervention support during project activities and outreach events, which is a requirement of the program. Next, we're going to talk about out-of-scope activities and unallowable activities. OVW and the EM program have specific out-of-scope activities that cannot be supported with grant funds. To assist with submitting a strong application, I'm going to go over some of the ones that have caused past applicants to receive point deductions during the peer review process. Please review the full list of out-of-scope activities on page 7 of the solicitation prior to writing your application to ensure you do not include any of the listed activities in your project. Number 2 is direct victim services. This specific grant program is a prevention-based program. It does not allow for the delivery of victim services. If you are interested in providing direct victim services, you should consider applying for the Children and Youth program instead. Number 4 is perpetrator services. Grant funds may not be used to provide support services for perpetrators of domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking, such as counseling, batterer intervention, or anger management. Number 5 is sexual harassment, bullying, and gender norms. Grant funds may not be used to develop and/or provide training, products, or policies that focus primarily on sexual harassment, bullying, or gender norms. OVW recognizes that these issues are serious and can be traumatic experiences. OVW also understands the intersection of the VAWA crimes and sexual harassment, bullying, and gender norms. However, OVW grant funds must be used to primarily address the crimes listed in the Violence Against Women Act, which are domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. To avoid possible point deductions, applicants should refrain from including activities and/or strategies that address sexual harassment, bullying, and gender norms without a clear linkage to the VAWA crimes in your project narrative. Number 7 is ceremonies, celebrations, and entertainment. Grant funds may not be used to support award ceremonies or other celebratory events, or the purchase of tickets for entertainment activities such as sporting events, movies, concerts, or museums. For example, grant funds may not be used to fund a graduation celebration for the participants of an eight-week mentoring program. Another example is grant funds may not be used to pay for the transportation and lunches for a group of boys to visit a local art center. Number 8 is athletics. Grant funds may not be used to pay the salaries for coaches. Grant funds may be used to support a portion of a coach's salary specific to the time spent on project activities. For example, coaches may receive training to prevent sexual assault or dating violence on the team or by team members. This could be supported with grant funds. Another example is a coach may provide prevention education to the team members. The time spent delivering this education to the team members could be supported with grant funds. Grant funds may not be used to support an individual's participation on an athletic team or event. Grant funds may not be used to buy uniforms or pay for transportation to and from games. Grant funds may be used to transport a team to a prevention education training, though. Number 9, technical assistance. Grant funds may not be used for the provision of TA to other entities. This includes the project partners. The distinction here is that engaging in program requires grantees to engage in cross-training activities where the grantee, project partner, and member organizations of the larger coordinated community response are providing training to one another. It is best to refrain from using the term technical assistance when referencing this training in the project narrative and budget, and instead refer to it as training or education. And number 11 is the service area. Grant funds may not be used to conduct or support regional or statewide activities. All applicants must ensure that proposed projects support community-specific activities and strategies only. In the past, there have been applications removed for further review because the proposed project was a statewide initiative. To avoid having this happen to your application, please ensure your project is focused to a specific community. Some examples of activities that are not community-based and could result in point deductions include national or statewide podcasts, organizing or presenting at regional, statewide, or national conferences, and educational or awareness campaigns that have been developed for regional or statewide distribution. Next, I'm going to go over some tips that may improve your chances on becoming an Engaging Men grant recipient. Please note that the following list is not a guarantee that your project will be funded, but is intended to assist you with submitting a strong and responsive application. Think of your application like a blueprint, a complete plan that explains how to do or develop something. Before a contractor can break ground on a new project, they must submit their blueprint to the local officials for review and approval. Your application is very similar to this in that it contains all of the elements necessary to successfully receive permission, otherwise known as funding, to begin the project, as well as the steps necessary to successfully execute and complete your project. So be as detailed and succinct as possible when writing your application. Read the solicitation. I've not reviewed every section of the solicitation, so read the solicitation in its entirety. Everything that needs to be included in or with your application is mentioned in the solicitation, and supporting resources are linked or referenced in the solicitation. For an application to be considered complete and move to the review process, it must include the following 4 components: a proposal narrative, a budget worksheet and budget narrative, a data requested with application sheet, and a memorandum of understanding. MOUs that do not contain signatures may receive point deductions or be removed from consideration. Be sure your project strategies and activities address the areas you have identified on the data requested with application sheet. It is okay for projects to focus on one crime or on just men. It does not increase your chances of being awarded a grant by stating that you will address every crime if your proposal narrative only provides information on how you will address sexual assault. A strong application is focused on the crimes, population, and purpose area or areas that will be served. If you are submitting a continuation application, be sure that your project is building upon what you have already accomplished with the last award. A continuation project should not simply be a continuation of the same activities. You must be able to demonstrate growth or expansion or be able to articulate well the reason or reasons why you are proposing the same activities. Use the application checklist on pages 36 and 37 of the solicitation. This checklist will help you ensure that all required documents are included in your application when you begin the submission process. Pages 26 to 27 of the solicitation include information on all of the additional required documents that must be submitted with your application. Should you be funded, failure to submit this additional information does cause delays in final approval of your budget and your project. Allow plenty of time to gather required information, especially the signatures on the MOU. Remember, for the MOU, you can have multiple signature pages so long as every individual that will be signing the MOU is listed on each signature page. This usually speeds the process as you do not have to wait for one signature before acquiring the next. To avoid any possibility of missing the submission deadline, submit your application as far in advance of the deadline as possible. Technical issues may arise, and the number of individuals seeking assistance from grants.gov or from JustGrants or from OVW increases on and near the submission date. Also, with JustGrants being a new system for everyone, there is a learning curve, so the more time you allow for the submission of your application, the better. Make the application easy to read and follow for all of the reviewers. Use the heading and subheading titles that are in the solicitation for each section. Be sure the application and responses to the program requirements and expectations are complete and clearly written. Avoid or limit the use of acronyms. Remember, the reviewers are not familiar with your community and will not be familiar with the acronyms your organization and project partners may use. It is very frustrating to have to keep going back and forth in an application to understand acronyms, so it is best to spell them out. Print out the application before submitting it to ensure appropriate formatting and adherence to page limit requirements. Also, number your pages in your application. And last, if your name and contact information is listed as the POC, please monitor your email inbox. There are times that the system may reject your application, and you will need to make sure you are getting those email alerts. Next, we're going to talk about technical challenges and late submissions. Pages 30 to 32 contain important information related to technical challenges and late submission requests. As I mentioned at the beginning of this session, the process for submitting an application is new this year. I cannot stress strong enough the importance of allowing yourself significant time to prepare and submit your application. Applicants experiencing technical issues with JustGrants should contact the OVW JustGrants support line as soon as possible at ovw.justgrantsupport@usdoj.gov. Also, OVW will take the necessary steps to ensure that applicants are able to submit their applications on time. Applicants experiencing JustGrants technical issues should ensure that they are continuing to develop their proposals while they are working to address any issues. Applicants should follow the solicitation guidance regarding technical difficulties. This will enable applicants to submit a full proposal by the deadline using an alternate method if necessary. OVW will update the submission guidance as necessary and will post this information on the OVW website under open solicitations. Next, we're going to talk about the Grants Financial Management Division. The next couple of slides, we're going to focus on aspects of your application that relate to the documents our financial team, the Grants Financial Management Division, also known as GFMD, is responsible for reviewing. More specifically, we will discuss some items that GFMD has identified from prior year applications that could help with expediting the review process. So for today, we're going to highlight certain aspects of the pre-award risk assessment and provide you a link in a detailed webinar on how to develop the budget that will be included in your application. The first things we will highlight are the items identified in the data requested with application sheet, which is completed by all applicants. Specifically, two items we would like to discuss are the single audit response and the IRS three-step safe harbor procedure. OVW requests that all applicants provide a statement as to whether they have expended $750,000 or more in federal funds during their last fiscal year. If they have, then they indicate that and also specify the end date of their last fiscal year. However, GFMD is finding that applicants do not always include this information and leave out whether or not they have met the threshold or the end date of their last fiscal year is not included. Please ensure this question is answered in its entirety on the data requested with application sheet. Another item we would like to highlight from the solicitation is specifically for nonprofit organizations. If you use the IRS three-step safe harbor procedure to determine your executive's compensation, you must reference the additional information section that provides the required disclosure letter. We would like to highlight that there are 4 parts of this disclosure letter that must be provided to OVW in order to comply with this requirement. The sample letter outlines all four parts of the disclosure, so please be sure to follow the sample and provide a response to each of the 4 pieces. The next item we would like to discuss are the financial accounting practices, which assist GFMD during their pre-award risk assessment review for all applications. Each applicant must prepare a response to all 11 questions, and each question has multiple parts. We have noticed from prior years that applicants do not always fully answer all parts of the questions, which in turn requires GFMD to reach out to the applicant, which may delay recommendations. Some of the most common issues that we have encountered have been, for example, question number 2, where the applicant indicates that they do indeed have internal policies, but they do not provide a brief list of topics covered in the policies and procedures. Another example of an incomplete response is question number 3, where the applicant does not provide a brief summary of the organization's process for tracking expenditures, and more specifically, whether or not it tracks budgeted versus actual expenditures. So these are just a few examples, but basically, please make sure you read each piece of each question and provide a full and comprehensive response. On the next slide, we'll talk about some resources that GFMD has put together for applicants. These resources have been put together by GFMD, and they should be used when you're creating your budget to be submitted with the application. Over the last year, GFMD has worked to develop a detailed webinar presentation on how to assist applicants in developing a budget to be submitted with their OVW applications. They want to help reduce any challenges you may face with the budget and make it clear what they look for when they review your budget. This webinar provides some insight as to what OVW financial staff considers during their review of your budget. You can use the following link, https://www.justice.gov/OVW/resources-applicants. The webinar can be found under the budget information section on this page. Also, another helpful tool is Uniform Guidance, which can be found at 2 CFR 200, and then another resource is the DOJ Financial Guide, as well as the program-specific solicitation. If you need assistance finding these resources, please contact the GFMD Help Desk. On our next slide, we have some contact information for you. So with that, we're finally at the end of this presentation. We know this is a lot of information to process, so if you have any questions related to this solicitation, please reach out to the CYEM program by either calling 202-514-0390 or send an email to ovw.consolouth@usdoj.gov. If you have questions about the GFMD information discussed, please feel free to contact the GFMD Help Desk at 888-514-8556 or by email at ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov. And please note that OVW staff cannot comment on the quality of an applicant's proposed project or proposed activities. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for your interest in the OVW Engaging Men and Boys program.